What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It is time to give you my updated college football playoff predictions as we head into week number 2 of the 2024 college football season. Some changes here after the first weekend of the college football season since my preseason predictions a couple weeks ago. Again, we're going to do these playoff predictions week by week, and these videos might right here be on Fridays. Again, I have like a full schedule and everything, so these, playoff predictions, the updated playoff prediction videos will be every Friday. Again, we're going to do this week by week until the end of the season here for college football. And like I said, I made quite a few changes here to my playoff predictions ever since the preseason a couple weeks ago. So let's go ahead and get right into it here with my updated college football playoff predictions as we head into week number 2 of the 2024 college football season. So again, here is the bracket for the college football playoff. Of course, the 12-team playoff era starts up this season. And again, there are 12 teams that can make the college football playoff this time instead of 4. And remember, how the college football playoff, 12-team playoff works, we got the 4 conference champions out of the Power 4. And then you got your at-large teams from 5 through 11 and the 5 through 11 seeds. And then you got the number 12 seed, which that will be a group of 5 team, a group of 5 champion and everything. And the first round games will be held on campus, and then you got the second and semifinal games. Those will be held on New Year's Six bowls in the semifinals and the second round of the quarterfinals. And then the national championship game will be held on a bigger stage. So again, that's how the 12-team playoff works here for 2024/2025. But let's go ahead and get into my updated playoff predictions here as we head into week number 2 of this college football season. We will start here with the top 4 teams. My number 1 seed, no change here. It's the Georgia Bulldogs. I think this is the best team in the country as of right now. Georgia kind of showed that against Clemson this past Saturday. I know they didn't have the best start in the first half of play, but second half we saw how good Georgia was. Obviously the offense got things going. Carson Beck, I think, is a definitely underrated quarterback in my opinion, and I think he's a potential Heisman candidate. Had a really good performance, and we can't really get excited after one game of the college football season, but Georgia definitely was the better team in that game this past Saturday. So based off of that, I'm going to go with Georgia here as my number 1 team, and this is not a change here from a couple weeks ago. I had Georgia at my number 1 seed and everything in my preseason predictions. So I got Georgia here at number 1. Moving on to number 2, no change here. I got the Ohio State Buckeyes. The Buckeyes looked pretty good in their first game against a really bad Akron team. Ohio State's offense, though, looked really explosive. The defense, again, looked also pretty good. And I think this is an offense that will get better for the Buckeyes as the season goes along. They do have a tough schedule coming up in the month of October. Once they get into Big Ten play, they got to play both Penn State and Oregon, both on the road this year. But I got the Buckeyes going to the Big Ten championship either way, just based off of what happened in the first weekend. And again, there's not really a lot to talk about because we just saw one game here for all these teams that you're going to see here in my playoff bracket. Georgia, though, I had them going to the SEC championship based off of their first game and winning the conference championship. That's how they would get in as the number 1 seed, and then same thing for Ohio State. I got them winning the Big Ten championship and getting the number 2 seed here in the playoff. So again, both Georgia and Ohio State were both number 1 and number 2 respectively a couple weeks ago in my playoff predictions for the preseason. So again, no changes here for both of these teams. Let's now go to my number 3 seed. I have made a change here. I had Florida State here a couple weeks ago at number 3, but with them now starting 0-2, I have a new team coming out of the ACC and everything as my number 3 seed. That team is going to be the Miami Hurricanes. Miami, I was very impressed with their performance against Florida this past Saturday. The offense was very explosive. The defense really took care of business and everything. Florida, it looks like it's not going to be a really good team just based off of what happened in that ball game. Miami obviously dominated the whole entire game. It seems like it was going to be a close game pretty much in the second quarter of play. Florida scored on a late touchdown, but then Miami, of course, answered back. And once they got the ball in the second half and everything, Miami just absolutely dominated the rest of this game. So I feel like Miami definitely deserves to be here as number 3 seed here. I feel like, after that win over Florida State, or actually after that win over Florida and everything, I feel like Miami is going to win the ACC championship just based off of what they did in week number 1. Now, Florida State, I wouldn't really count them out just yet, but I know they have lost a couple of games already in the ACC to Georgia Tech and Boston College. The ACC had a pretty rough first weekend. You look at NC State, started off slow against Western Carolina, had a pretty tough matchup there, but they were able to win that game at the end of the day. Then you have Virginia Tech going down to Vanderbilt. I think Virginia Tech probably is likely out of it. I had a lot of high expectations for that team. But, not too far Miami, behind Miami is Louisville and North Carolina. North Carolina, I know they're going to be without Max Johnson for the rest of the year, but I think that's a team that you can consider as a team that can probably catch up to Miami, and same thing with Louisville. Now, Miami and Louisville play each other in the regular season. Miami doesn't play Clemson in the regular season, so that's going to be very interesting there, and same thing with Clemson. I wouldn't really count them out just yet either, so, I know they played like a really tough game against Georgia, but I really wouldn't count out Clemson just yet because that was a non-conference game. It's not really a matchup where they played in the conference. Again, we'll see how Clemson does this weekend. See if they can bounce back and probably win the rest of their games in the conference. But again, Miami definitely was the more talented team this weekend out of this conference, and I think they definitely deserve to be here at number 3. Again, a couple weeks ago, I had Florida State now. I got Miami here as my number 3 seed. Let's now go to my number 4 seed. No change here from a couple weeks either. I got Oklahoma State here as my number 4 seed. I got them going to the Big 12 championship and winning it. The Cowboys took care of business against South Dakota State. A lot of people thought Oklahoma State would struggle in that game, but obviously they took care of business, and I think this is going to be a very talented team just based off of that first game and everything. Now, if Oklahoma State probably struggled against, South Dakota State, and let's say they probably lose that game, I probably would have put Utah here at number 4 as the next top contender to probably get to the Big 12 championship and obviously make the college football playoff. But Oklahoma State definitely showed why they were probably, the front runners in the Big 12 in that game against South Dakota State. Now, they'll have their first kind of real competition coming up tomorrow against Arkansas. We'll see how good this Oklahoma State team is for real. But we're going to find out more about this team once they get into Big 12 play. They'll play Utah, not in like a few weeks away. So yeah, Oklahoma State and Utah, that'll be definitely kind of like the game that decides who is probably the front runner in the Big 12 for right now. But you can't really count out these other teams not that far behind them. You got Kansas State. You also got West Virginia, which I don't really think they're out of it just yet. I know they had a loss to Penn State and everything, but the Big 12 is wide open. The ACC and the Big 12 are both conferences that are very hard to predict. They were really hard to predict in the preseason, and a lot of these and both of those conferences are going to beat up on each other as the season goes along. So again, I got Oklahoma State here as my number 4 seed. So these are my top 4 conference champions heading into week number 2 of the 2024 season. Let's now go to my at-large teams. We'll start here with number 5. No change here since a couple weeks ago. I got Texas here at number 5. I got this team still going to the SEC championship, but losing to Georgia in the regular season, and then also losing to them in the SEC championship as well. But Texas actually looked pretty good in that first game. We'll see how good this team is actually going to be going up against a really tough competition coming up tomorrow afternoon against Michigan and everything. Of course, that'll be a very tough test here for this Texas team because they're playing on the road. But I do favor Texas a little bit in that game because I feel like Texas definitely has a more better roster, and I also think they're going to be a really explosive offense just based off of what happened against Colorado State this past weekend. So I got Texas here at number 5 as my number 1 at-large team here at number 5 seed. My number 6 seed is going to be Oregon, so no change here from a couple weeks ago with the Oregon Ducks. I had them going to the Big Ten Championship, but losing to Ohio State there in the Big Ten Championship. I got them winning against Ohio State in the regular season, but now when I look at that game, I kind of favor the Buckeyes just a little bit based off of what happened in the first week and everything. Again, we can't overreact too much here because it was just one game. Oregon obviously had a very flat performance against Idaho and everything, but I feel like the Ducks will definitely repeat themselves coming up tomorrow night when they play against a really good Boise State team. Their defense, Boise State's defense wasn't really good this past weekend. So I feel like Oregon will score a lot of points. I think that game's kind of have a chance to be like a shootout and everything. But I think Oregon definitely will win this game. And I think that Idaho game was just a fluke. So I think Oregon, they're still a very talented team. I still think they'll get to the Big Ten championship. Again, it's just one game. We can't overreact too much to just one game and everything. I just think Oregon definitely was not focused in that game. But I got them here as the number 6 seed anyway. My second highest at-large team here for the college football playoff. Next up, we got Ole Miss here at number 7. A couple weeks ago, I had LSU here at number 7 making the college football playoff because they were a 10-2 team. But after they lost to USC and everything in that opener, so I had to make a change here. I got Ole Miss now here at number 7. Ole Miss was pretty explosive on the offensive side of the football. We know that they're going to be pretty explosive there. The defense, we'll see how good they're going to be once they get into like a tough competition. I think they got Wake Forest coming up, next weekend. Not this weekend, but they got them next weekend coming up. So we'll see how they, do against another really good offense in Wake Forest. But I got Ole Miss here at number 7. Moving on to number 8, I got Tennessee here at number 8. They absolutely dominated Chattanooga, a really bad Chattanooga team. The offense was very explosive. Nico Amaliava looked really good at quarterback. And this is going to be a really explosive Tennessee offense based off of what we saw in that first game, just like Ole Miss. But we'll see how good Tennessee is going to be tomorrow night. They'll play NC State, another team out of the ACC and everything. NC State wasn't really that good last week, but, they might be a little bit better this week because when it comes to these kind of like big games and everything, I feel like NC State was overlooking Western Carolina, and they might be focused on this Tennessee team for this weekend. But again, Tennessee here, I kind of am favoring in that game just a little bit. I have them winning that game as well. But I got Tennessee here at number 8. Moving on to number 9, that's Penn State. Penn State coming off that really good win against West Virginia on the road. That game actually was in a weather delay for quite a while, but in the second half, Penn State absolutely was a more talented team than West Virginia was, and they definitely look like they have some pieces on the offensive side of the football now compared to last year. And I think the offense has a chance to be pretty good this season based off of what I saw in that first game. Defensively, they're going to be really dominant on that side of the football either way. The running game didn't really get off to a good start, but I think Penn State's running game will be just fine. It's going to get better as the season goes along, and they do have a tough schedule coming up in the Big Ten and everything. They got Ohio State to play this year, but the good news is they get that game at home, so I don't think Penn State is really that far behind of getting to the Big Ten championship. And based off of what they did in the first game, Drew Aller played pretty well in this game as well. I think Penn State might have a chance to be a sneaky good team in the Big Ten this year, so watch out here for Penn State in the Big Ten this season, as they are at number 9 here in my college football playoff predictions for week number 2. We now move on to number 10. That's Notre Dame. I had a really tough time between Notre Dame and Penn State, choosing to be like the number 9 or number 10 seed. I think Penn State played a little bit better than Notre Dame, though, just based off of what happened in week number 1. So I got Notre Dame at number 10. They're coming off that big win against Texas A&M on the road. I mean, obviously, that was probably their toughest game to start out the year here for the Fighting Irish. But with that win, Notre Dame might have a clear path to make it to the college football playoff. You look at their schedule, they don't have to play Clemson this year. Yes, they have to play Louisville and also Florida State, but that's it. Florida State is not going to be a really good team just based off of what happened. They also got Georgia Tech, which I think that'll be a little bit tricky, but Louisville will also be tricky. The good news is they get Louisville at home this year. So yeah, Notre Dame might have a really clear path to make it to the college football playoff. And again, if they beat Louisville pretty easily and they also beat Florida State, take care of business in that game, and they also beat Georgia Tech, Notre Dame is definitely in the playoff for the 2024 season. So again, the Fighting Irish, I was really impressed with their defense in that first game against Texas A&M, and I also was pretty impressed with their offense in that fourth quarter. So I got the Fighting Irish here at number 10. Moving on to number 11, no change here. I got Michigan as my number 11 seed. I know they did not look great against Fresno State, but again, it's just one game, just like I talked about with Oregon. You can't overreact too much just because it's a first game of the season. I think Michigan will be a really good team this year. We'll see how good they're going to be against Texas this weekend. Again, that's going to be a big game. They get the home field advantage and everything. Again, I am favoring Texas in that game, but I wouldn't really be shocked if Michigan actually pulled off a huge win in this one, and they actually pull off an upset either, because they're playing at home in this game. So I feel like with Michigan playing at home, they might have a chance to pull off the upset. Again, I'm going to go with Texas in that game, but If Michigan wins this game, I feel like they can probably move up to where they can be like a second at-large team at that number 5 spot or that number 6 spot. Maybe Oregon moves to number 5 next week, and then Michigan probably moves on to number 6, but we'll see what happens. Again, in that Texas game coming up tomorrow afternoon. And then my number 12 seed is going to be Boise State. I got them winning their Group of 5 championship. Boise State obviously had a big shootout this past weekend against Georgia Southern. The running back for Boise State, though, had a really great performance, a Heisman kind of performance and everything, had 6 rushing touchdowns. But they're playing a really tough game on the road at Oregon tomorrow night. That'll be really a tough game here for Boise State. But if they can compete maybe for a little while, maybe let's say in the first half, they could probably have a chance to still go run the table in the Mountain West, and they could probably make it to the college football playoff either way. Again, Boise State's pretty much my pick to go to the college football playoff out of the Group of 5 and everything. I honestly don't see a Group of 5 team making it past the first round, though, and that's really a tough, it's really tough to kind of pick a Group of 5 team out of that Group of 5 level to make it into the college football playoff this year. So again, I got Boise State here at number 12. Again, as my number 12 seed and also my fifth my fifth conference champion pick as well, and then also my Group of 5 champion. So let's now make predictions here if these games were to happen tomorrow night. So we got Tennessee versus Penn State in the first round, Texas versus Boise State, and then Ole Miss versus Notre Dame, and then we got Oregon versus Michigan. Let's make predictions here. So I got Penn State moving on in the first round. I got them beating Tennessee. I think that would be a really close game between these two teams. I feel like it would be a shootout, though, just based off of what happened in the first game. I feel like Penn State definitely has a better defense, though, compared to Tennessee. They're definitely a more talented team as well, so I got Penn State moving on here to the second round. And then we got Oklahoma State versus Texas. I got Texas beating Boise State, I should say. I think Texas rolls in that game just based off of what happened last week. And then Notre Dame, I got them beating Ole Miss here. I think Notre Dame's defense is good enough to stop this Ole Miss offense, and I think that, if these two teams met and everything, I feel like, Notre Dame would probably run the football in this one and definitely kind of waste the clock down and keep that Ole Miss offense off the field for as long as possible. So with that being said, I think Notre Dame gets the win there, and they move on there to the second round. And then we got Oregon versus Michigan. I still think Oregon is a better team than Michigan is. I think Oregon is definitely a lot more better than Michigan, and obviously both of these teams are coming off really flat performances this past weekend. But I think Oregon wins that game just based off of what happened this past weekend. I feel like Oregon is a much more talented team than Michigan is as well. So I got Oregon moving on to the second round, and then we go to the quarterfinals. We got Penn State versus Georgia, Oklahoma State versus Texas. Then we got Notre Dame versus Ohio State, and then we got Miami versus Oregon. I think Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, and Miami all move on to the semifinals. I think Georgia and Penn State would definitely be like a low-scoring type game just because both defenses, I think, are pretty even. But Georgia definitely clearly has a better defense, and I think they might have a slight better offense than Penn State as well, just based off of what I've seen in the first week and everything. Texas, I think they beat Oklahoma State here. I think Texas is a much more better team than Oklahoma State is, but I do expect Oklahoma State to make this game a shootout. I think it would be a shootout here if both of these teams played. Ohio State and Notre Dame, that would be another defensive battle. I like the Buckeyes to win that one. I think Ohio State is a much more better team than Notre Dame is. And then Miami and Oregon, I got Miami actually getting the win here. I think Miami, based off of what they did in the first week and Oregon being flat, I think Miami definitely would have an advantage going into this game just because they have a little bit of momentum. And I kind of trust Cam Ward a little bit to make the explosive plays. I like Dylan Gabriel and all, but I like this Miami team a little bit more just based off of what they did in the first week. So now we got the semifinals, Georgia versus Texas, and then Ohio State versus Miami. These are two really good matchups here, but I got Georgia and Ohio State moving on here to the national championship. I think Georgia beats Texas for the third time. Again, this would be a rematch here from the SEC championship and also the regular season. And I say it all off season long. I think Georgia definitely is clearly a better team than Texas, but we'll find out when these two teams play in the regular season and see who is better. And then Ohio State versus Miami. I think this would be a shootout here between these two teams. You got two really good quarterbacks and then also really good running backs and wide receivers on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, I would give the advantage to the Buckeyes here just because I feel like they're the more talented defense. So we got Ohio State versus Georgia, exactly what my preseason predictions looked like from a couple weeks ago. I'm still going to go with Georgia here to win the national championship. Again, I think Georgia definitely is the best team in the country just based off of what we saw in the first weekend of the college football season. So that is my official college football playoff week number 2 predictions heading into the second weekend of the college football season. Let me guys know what you think about these playoff predictions. Give me your updated playoff predictions down in the comments below, and we will see if there's going to be any updates next week of the college football season. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.